I'm not the kind of guy who'd sit you down and tell you how life is hard or whatever. We all fucking know it is. But man, that week made every bad day look like a goddamn holiday. It started simple. Too fucking simple. I'd just gotten back from a hiking trip with my old buddies. Nothing fancy. Beer, bad jokes, and a few miles of trails. My wife, Laura, kept telling me I needed it. "You're too damn tense, Pete," she'd say. And she wasn't wrong. Between the job, the bills, and, well, life, my head felt like it was going to pop half the time. The only one who never seemed to judge me was my dog Roscoe. He's this big, floppy-eared mutt my mom gave me before she passed. "Take care of him, Pete," she'd told me, "and he'll take care of you." I loved that damn dog more than I liked most people. He was always there, wagging his tail like a maniac even when I felt like absolute shit. So, I'm driving home, tired as fuck, because I've barely slept. Insomnia's a bitch. My friends can pass out anywhere. But me? Nah, I get to stare at the ceiling and think about all the ways my life's a mess. Anyway, I'm about a half hour out when I spot this guy walking along the side of the road. He's got this duffel bag slung over his shoulder and a thumb out. Looks normal enough. Normal clothes, normal face. I've picked up hitchhikers before, no big deal. I'm tired, but I figure, what the hell. So I pull over. The guy gets in, and he's polite as hell. Says his name's Gary, that he's heading a little further up the road. He's got this way of talking that's disarming. Like the kind of guy you'd grab a beer with, you know? I wasn't planning on company, but Roscoe liked him, and that's usually a good sign. Gary and I make small talk. He asks about Roscoe, and I tell him about my mom, about how the dog's the last thing she gave me. He listens, actually listens. Not like most people who just wait for their turn to talk. I kind of like the guy, honestly. But then shit gets weird. Subtle at first. He asks questions, normal ones, but there's something about the way he phrases them. "So, Pete, you live alone?" "Nah, I've got a wife and kids." "Oh yeah? They miss you when you're out hiking?" "Yeah, Gary, they fucking do." We're driving along this quiet stretch of road, and I'm starting to feel this tension, like he's studying me. I chalk it up to my usual paranoia. I've always been like that, thinking the world's out to get me when it's really just my own damn brain. But Roscoe? He's acting strange now too. He's sitting up, ears perked, watching Gary like he's trying to figure him out. By the time we hit Gary's stop, I'm relieved. He thanks me, slings his bag over his shoulder, and waves as I pull away. I glance in the rear view, and he's just standing there, watching me drive off. Creepy, but whatever. I've got shit to do. The next night, I'm tossing and turning like usual. Roscoe's on the floor next to the bed, snoring like a chainsaw. It's almost comforting, except something's off. I can't put my finger on it at first. Then I hear it, this faint scraping sound, like nails on wood. My first thought is that one of the kids is up, messing around. But when I get up to check, their doors are shut, and they're both out cold. I head downstairs, and Roscoe's with me now, growling low in his throat. That's when I see it. The back door is open. Just a crack. I swear to God, I locked it before bed. I tell myself maybe Laura forgot to check it, but my gut's telling me something else. I lock it, double-check the windows, and go back to bed. But I don't sleep a fucking wink. Over the next few days, weird shit keeps happening. The feeling that someone's watching me when I'm outside. Footsteps on the porch late at night. Roscoe's barking at shadows. I tell Laura about it, but she brushes it off. "You're tired, Pete. You need to get some real sleep. Yeah, sure. Like that's gonna fix everything. One night, I'm outside smoking, trying to clear my head, and I swear I see Gary, just for a second, standing at the edge of the woods behind the house. I call out, but he doesn't move. When I grab a flashlight and head over, there's no one there, just trees and shadows. By now, I'm a fucking mess. I'm snapping at Laura, barking at the kids. I can't concentrate at work. Roscoe's my only comfort, and even he seems on edge. Every night I'm checking the locks, patrolling the house like some paranoid asshole. And every night, I swear I hear something outside. Scraping, whispering, footsteps. It's driving me insane. Then comes the night it all goes to shit. It's late. I'm sitting in the living room with a baseball bat across my lap. Because fuck this. Roscoe's at my feet growling softly. Laura and the kids are upstairs asleep. I hear it again, that faint scraping sound. Only this time, it's louder, closer. I flip on the porch light, and there he is. Gary, standing on the fucking porch with that duffel bag. He's smiling, but it's not friendly anymore. It's the kind of smile that makes your skin crawl. I throw open the door, yelling, "What the fuck are you doing here?" Roscoe's barking like crazy now, teeth bared. Gary just stands there, calm as hell. "You left the door unlocked," he says, like it's the most normal thing in the world. "Thought I'd stop by." That's when he pulls a fucking knife out of the bag. I'm not gonna lie. I froze for a second. But Roscoe, he didn't. He lunged at Gary, teeth sinking into his arm. They're wrestling on the porch, and I'm screaming, swinging the bat, but Gary's fast. He slams Roscoe against the railing, and I hear this sickening crack. I lose it. I go after him, but he bolts into the woods, leaving the knife behind. Roscoe's lying there, whining, bleeding. I'm shaking so bad, I can barely pick him up. Laura calls 911. By the time the cops get there, Gary's long gone. They take the knife, take my statement, but I can tell they don't think they'll find him. Just some random psycho, they say. Happens all the time. Roscoe didn't make it. The vet did what she could, but his injuries were too much. I sat in that sterile fucking room, holding him as he took his last breath. And I swear to God, I've never felt more helpless in my life. My mom's last gift, gone because I couldn't protect him. It's been weeks now. Gary's still out there somewhere. The cops say they're looking, but I've got no faith in them. I've started sleeping with a loaded gun by the bed. Laura's scared. The kids are scared. And I'm fucking terrified. But I'll be damned if I'll let that bastard hurt my family. Sometimes late at night I think I hear Roscoe's bark, just for a second, and I wonder if it's my brain fucking with me, or if he's still watching over me, watching over all of us. I've got no happy ending for you. No neat little bow to tie this story up. Life doesn't work like that. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. When the shit hits the fan, you'll find out real quick who's in your corner. And for me, it was a big floppy-eared mutt who never gave up on me, even when I didn't deserve it. It started with a fever. Nothing crazy, just one of those low-grade ones that make you feel like shit, but not bad enough to stop you from dragging yourself to work. My wife, Emily, had been nagging me to see a doctor for days. "You're burning up, Jason," she said, pressing the back of her hand to my forehead. "It's probably the flu, but what if it's something serious? Just go." I didn't want to go. I hate hospitals. Something about the smell of antiseptic and misery clings to your skin like bad cologne. But Emily wouldn't let up, so there I was, sitting in a cold-ass hospital gown, under those glaring fluorescent lights, while some nurse with a fake smile checked my vitals. "We'll need to keep you for observation, Mr. Harris," the doctor said. He was a short, pudgy guy, with glasses that made his eyes look too big for his face. "Just a couple of days. It's probably viral, but we want to rule out anything serious." Emily squeezed my hand and smiled. "See? It's for the best." I forced a grin, but inside, I was pissed. 2 days in this sterile hellhole? Great. The first night was fine, I guess. Boring as hell. Emily stayed with me until visiting hours ended, and I spent most of the time flipping through shitty daytime TV shows and scrolling on my phone. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Nothing weird about that. It's a hospital. But these weren't the usual hurried steps of nurses or the squeak of carts. They were slow, deliberate, like someone pacing. I sat up, my throat dry. The footsteps stopped outside my door. "Hello?" I called out. Nothing. I told myself it was just my imagination, maybe a nurse checking on patients. But when I got up to peek out the door, the hallway was empty. Just that eerie hum of the lights and the faint smell of disinfectant. I didn't sleep much after that. The second night was worse. I woke up around 2 a.m. to this sound, like whispering. It was faint, almost too soft to hear, but it was there. I strained to listen, my heart pounding. It sounded like my name. Jason. I flicked on the light and looked around the room. Nobody. The door was shut and the window was locked. My skin prickled, and I felt like an idiot. But I pressed the call button for the nurse. When she came in, I asked her if anyone had been outside my room. She gave me that polite, condescending smile nurses give when they think you're losing your shit. "No one's been down this hall in hours," she said. "Try to get some rest." Rest? Fuck that. I spent the rest of the night sitting up in bed, staring at the door. The whispers didn't come back, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. By the time I got discharged, I was a wreck. Emily picked me up, all smiles and relief. But I couldn't muster much enthusiasm. Something about that hospital. It got under my skin. I didn't tell her about the footsteps or the whispers. She'd just think I was crazy or overtired. We drove home in silence, and I tried to convince myself it was over. But it wasn't. The first night back home, I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of something scratching at the bedroom window. We live on the second floor, so my first thought was a branch or something. But when I pulled back the curtain, there was nothing there. No trees, no wind, nothing. Emily stirred beside me. "What are you doing?" she mumbled. "Nothing. Go back to sleep." But I didn't sleep. I sat there in the dark, staring at the window, waiting for that sound to come back. It didn't, but the feeling was there again. That fucking feeling that someone was watching me. Over the next few days, things got worse. I'd catch glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, like a shadow darting past the doorway or a figure standing at the edge of the yard. Every time I looked, it was gone. Emily started to notice. "You've been acting weird," she said one night over dinner. "Are you still not feeling well?" "I'm fine," I snapped, a little too harshly. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't press it. I felt like an asshole, but I couldn't shake this sense of dread crawling under my skin. Then came the dreams, fucking nightmares, vivid and horrifying. I'd see the hospital, the hallways stretching out forever, and those goddamn footsteps always just behind me. Sometimes I'd hear the whispers again, or I'd wake up gasping, convinced someone was standing over me. One night, Emily woke me up. "Jason, what the hell?" she said, shaking my shoulder. "What?" I mumbled, still half asleep. "You were standing in the hallway," she said, her voice shaky. "I called your name, and you just stared at me. You looked different." "I was asleep," I said. "You must have dreamed it." "I know what I saw," she said, her eyes wide and glistening. That's when I realized she was scared of me, my own fucking wife. The next day, I came home from work to find her sitting on the couch, staring at an old photo album. It was one of those we'd put together when we were talking about adoption, full of happy memories we wanted to share with a kid someday. "We should call the agency," she said without looking up. "Start the process again." I froze. Something about the way she said it felt off. "I thought we were waiting a while," I said. "Why wait?" she said, finally looking at me. Her smile was too wide, her eyes too bright. "We're ready, aren't we?" I didn't know what to say. She'd been the one to put everything on hold after our last application fell through. Now all of a sudden, she was gung-ho about it. That night, I woke up to the sound of her talking. At first, I thought she was on the phone, but when I opened my eyes, she was sitting at the foot of the bed, facing the window. "Emily," I whispered. She didn't answer, just kept whispering, too low for me to make out the words. I got up and touched her shoulder. She turned to look at me, and my stomach dropped. Her eyes weren't right. They looked empty, like she wasn't really there. "You're scaring me," I said, my voice shaking. She blinked, and just like that, she was back to normal. "What?" she said, her voice groggy. "What's wrong?" I didn't answer. I just stared at her, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter. It was written in my handwriting, but I didn't remember writing it. "It's coming." I stared at the note, my hands shaking. What the fuck did it mean? What was coming? Emily came downstairs, cheerful as ever, like nothing had happened. "Coffee?" she asked, smiling. I shoved the note in my pocket and nodded. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the TV on low, every sound making me jump. Around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate. My heart raced as I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a fireplace poker, and crept toward the noise. Emily was standing at the bottom of the stairs, staring at me. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice calm, too calm. "I heard something," I said, gripping the poker like a lifeline. She tilted her head, her smile widening. "It's just us, Jason." I wanted to believe her, but something in her voice made my skin crawl. The next day, I called the adoption agency and told them we weren't ready. I didn't tell Emily. She'd been acting so strange. I didn't trust her reaction. That night, I found her in the nursery we'd set up years ago, the one we'd stopped using after the last failed adoption. She was rocking in the chair, holding something in her arms. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice trembling. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and unblinking. "Can't you hear it?" she whispered. "It's crying." My blood ran cold. Her arms were empty. The next morning, she was gone. No note, no call, nothing. Just gone. The only thing she left behind was the photo album, open to a page with a picture of the two of us at the hospital, smiling. But I swear to God, there was someone else in the background of that photo. A figure, blurry and dark, standing in the doorway, watching. And now every time I close my eyes, I see them. I lost my fucking job. After 9 goddamn years of grinding away in a cubicle, they dropped me like a sack of shit. Downsizing, they said, like that word would somehow soften the blow. No severance, no thanks for your hard work, just a pathetic little meeting where some HR robot read off a script and handed me a box for my stuff. It's like they expected me to just pack up my life and fuck off quietly. And honestly, I might have. I might have just buried myself in my shitty one-bedroom apartment, drinking myself stupid until the world forgot I existed. But then my brother Danny decided to butt in. He showed up uninvited with a six-pack and this big, stupid grin, talking about how I needed fresh air and a reset. "We're going camping this weekend," he said, like it wasn't a goddamn question. "I'm not in the mood for kumbaya bullshit, Danny," I told him, but he wouldn't let up. "Just come. It'll be good for you, me, you and the guys. We'll drink some beers, sit around the fire. You'll forget about that shitty job for a while." And somehow, against all better judgment, I said yes. By the time we got to the campsite, I was already regretting it. Don't get me wrong, the place was gorgeous. Dense woods, a quiet lake, crisp air that didn't reek of car exhaust and desperation. But I was not in the mood for nature. My idea of therapy involved Netflix and whiskey, not mosquitoes and dirt. Still, Danny and his buddies were hyped. They set up tents, cracked open beers, and joked around like they didn't have a care in the world. For a while, I went along with it. I drank a few beers, laughed at their stupid jokes, even helped gather firewood. It wasn't so bad, really. But then the excuses started. First, it was Pete. "Shit, my kid's got a soccer game tomorrow morning. Totally forgot." Then Mike, "Wife's freaking out about something. I gotta go." One by one they bailed, leaving just me and Danny. "Guess it's just us," Danny said, shrugging like it was no big deal. "We'll have a good time anyway." But even Danny couldn't stick it out. Around sunset, his phone buzzed, and I could see his face go pale. "Dude, I'm sorry," he said, "but I've got to go. Work emergency. You'll be okay, right?" I wanted to tell him to fuck off, to yell at him for dragging me out here and leaving me to rot. But I just nodded. "Yeah, I'll be fine." "You sure?" he asked, his eyes darting nervously like he was already halfway out the door. "Go," I snapped. "I'm not a goddamn child." By the time the sun dipped below the trees, I was alone. Completely and utterly alone. It was unsettling, to say the least. The silence out here wasn't like city silence. It wasn't cars in the distance or the hum of an air conditioner. It was dead quiet, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the chirp of a cricket. At first I tried to embrace it. I sat by the fire, stared at the flames, and sipped on a beer. But as the night stretched on, the silence started to weigh on me. Every little sound felt magnified. A twig snapping in the distance sounded like a gunshot. The rustling of leaves felt like someone sneaking up behind me. I told myself to relax, to stop being such a paranoid asshole. It's just the woods, I thought. Just animals doing their thing. But then I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a shadow, a trick of the firelight. But then it moved. Just outside the glow of the fire, something was standing there, watching. My heart slammed against my ribs as I squinted into the darkness, trying to make out what the hell it was. "Hello?" I called, my voice cracking like a scared little bitch. No answer. I grabbed a flashlight and shone it toward the trees, but there was nothing there. Just trees and bushes swaying gently in the breeze. "Get a grip," I muttered to myself. "You're jumping at shadows, you idiot." I tried to shake it off, but the feeling didn't go away. It felt like I was being watched. Like someone's eyes were boring into the back of my skull. I couldn't fucking relax. Every time I turned my head, I thought I saw a movement out of the corner of my eye. But every time I looked, there was nothing. Around midnight, I decided to call it a night. The fire was dying down, and I figured maybe I'd feel less like a paranoid lunatic if I just went to sleep. My tent was small and cramped, but at least it felt enclosed, safe. I zipped up the flap, turned off the flashlight, and lay down on the thin, shitty sleeping bag. For a while, I just stared at the ceiling of the tent, listening to the sounds of the woods. It was quieter now, almost eerily so. My ears strained to pick up every little sound. A distant owl, the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig. Wait, a twig? My body went rigid. That sound wasn't far off. It was close, too fucking close. I held my breath, my ears straining for any other sound, and then I heard it. Soft, deliberate footsteps. Someone was walking around my campsite. Fuck this, I whispered under my breath. I grabbed the flashlight and unzipped the tent, just enough to peek out. The fire was nearly out, just a faint glow of embers casting long, flickering shadows. At first I didn't see anything, but then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. A figure, tall, lean, standing just at the edge of the clearing. They weren't doing anything, just standing there, watching. My stomach dropped, and my hand tightened around the flashlight. "Who the fuck are you?" I yelled, my voice shaky but loud enough to echo through the trees. No response. The figure didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there like some creepy statue. "I'm calling the cops," I shouted, even though my phone was dead and I knew it. The figure tilted its head slightly, like it was amused, and then it turned and walked into the woods. Just like that. No rush, no panic, like it knew I wasn't going to follow. And it was right. There was no fucking way I was chasing after some psycho in the dark. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined that figure standing over my tent, staring down at me. I kept the flashlight clutched in my hand like it was a weapon, even though I knew it wouldn't do shit if they came back. When the sun finally rose, I packed up my shit in record time. I didn't even bother with breakfast. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. But as I was stuffing the last of my gear into my backpack, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Footprints. Dozens of them, circling my tent. They weren't mine. Whoever had been watching me last night had been closer than I realized. Much closer. My stomach churned as I followed the tracks around the campsite. They didn't lead anywhere. It was like whoever it was had just vanished. I didn't stick around to figure it out. I grabbed my stuff, threw it in the car, and peeled out of there like my life depended on it. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't told anyone about it. Not Danny, not my friends, not anyone. What the fuck would I even say? "Hey, I think some psycho stalked me in the woods." They'd laugh it off, tell me I'm being dramatic, or worse, they'd actually believe me and make me relive the whole thing. But the thing is, I can't stop thinking about it. About that figure. About the footprints. About the way they just stood there, watching me like they had all the time in the world. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I can feel it again. That same feeling I had in the woods. Like someone's watching me. Like they never really left. And the worst part, I don't think they're done with me. Not yet.